According to French media outlet Ligue Sport, West Ham United are the current frontrunners for Saint-Étienne striker Lucas Stassin. However, there's reportedly a lot of interest in the 20-year-old who scored 12 goals this season, including Marseille, Sporting and Wolves. But he's available for a rumoured price tag of just £17 million after Saint-Étienne were relegated this season. Now, I'd never heard of him. The first I'd ever heard of him was yesterday when Ligue Sport did that article. So I've decided to do two things. Number one, ask someone that does know about him. That's coming up. And number two, go and have a look for myself. So before I have a little chat about him, if you're new to the channel, please do subscribe. And also do drop a like on the video as well by clicking thumbs up. We could get 1,000 likes on this video. That would be fantastic. Now, when I say go have a look at him, we've got access to Wildescout here at Hamish Chat. We're very fortunate. We used a brand deal's money to invest in Wildescout because we thought it would improve the content that we put out, which is debatable. We've not used it enough. However, just to give you a small insight, so what we can do is have a look at all his footage. So we can have a look at all his goals, all his passes, all his shots that he doesn't score, his aerial duels, his smart passes, his dribbling. We can look at everything in terms of HD footage on Wildescout. But if we really wanted to, we could go watch 90-minute games of Saint-Étienne as well. So when we refer to looking at players' footage, that's what we're looking at rather than a YouTube highlights reel. But also we've got access to the data as well. So this is just a quick snapshot of what we're looking at. You can see his averages for the season across various metrics. You've got his games down the left-hand side as well. So in terms of data, we've got access to pretty much everything except his running statistics. That's extra, and the brand deal didn't pay that much that we could go get everything, unfortunately. Now, data-wise, for Stassin, we've been linked to quite a few players this summer that I look at it, the data side of it, first of all, and they're impressive. But Stassin looks very impressive data-wise. He looks like an absolute finisher. His statistics for his shots, more than half his shots are on target. And then in terms of putting his shots away, it's through the roof. I would argue it's unsustainable. It reminds me a little bit of John Duran. When John Duran broke through at Aston Villa, his statistics, shots to goals, conversion rate, it was just unrealistic. He wasn't going to be able to sustain it, and I still don't think he will. So I think Stassin's got a little bit of that about him. However, looking at his footage, it looks like he plays off the shoulder of the defence, constantly in between two centre-backs as well. His runs are very good. Whilst he doesn't appear to be rapid, his runs are smart. Some of his finishes are just tap-ins, but that's because I always think sometimes strikers don't get enough credit. They'll say, oh, it's just a 5-yard tap-in. Yeah, but the positioning, the timing of his run, the way he's read the play, his link up with his teammate, you've got to have all of that understanding in order to get into that position in the first place. I want to see my striker scoring 5-yard tap-ins. That's because it would suggest that the rest of his game is really good, is really strong. But there's also a couple of really nice finishes in there. A little chip over the goalkeeper, one that he's hit from just outside the box. He's put his laces through it and hit it. Really clean strike. So data-wise, looks impressive. Footage-wise, looks impressive. However, there is a ceiling, and it's not a very big one, as to how excited I can get about this player because I've never heard of him, because I've never seen him play a full 90-minute game. So I decided to speak to someone who has. I caught up with Sloth from Babbling Irons because he knows a lot more about Lucas Stassin than I do. So here is what Sloth thinks about the player and the rumour. Hopefully you enjoy. Sloth from Babbling Irons, my go-to guy when it comes to players I've never heard of. Lucas Stassin, what are you laughing at?
Go-to guy. I'm just happy to be involved, mate.
Anyway, well, you're going to be heavily involved in the next 10 minutes because I had never heard of this guy until approximately 6 hours ago. And then I messaged you and said, "Oi, what do you know? Can we record?" And you said, "I'm about, let's do it." I'm just going to hand the floor to you. Talk to me about him. What is he? What kind of player is he? What position is he?
Well, not Paul Smith has kind of stolen my scoop here because we've actually played against him. He came on against us for Anderlecht for like 13 minutes, but they scored while he was on the pitch. And he's a really exciting young player. For anybody who's watched him or hasn't watched him, he's 6 foot. He's not massively strong, but he's the kind of player who just floats about the pitch. He works hard, but he just kind of drifts about, and he's not the quickest, but he has a bit of pace and he makes things look easy. He's that kind of footballer. He drifts into space and seems to never work up a sweat. And you'll look at the end of the game and it'll have covered tons of ground and been all over the park. And you think, how's he done that? He's a player that I think I've been talking about for a few months now. He went on this spectacular run in the new year. But even before then, it was the work rate and things like his vision for a pass, his ability to lay off to his teammates that was catching the eye. And I think the sort of link price is about 20 million euros. And I think for a 20-year-old, that's a great price.
Yeah, I was just looking at his sort of the data side of it and his heat map for the season. Like you said, it's left to right, but also very deep as well. So when he's, am I right in saying he's a striker primarily? But does he drop deep? Does he have a strike partner? Is he a lone striker at where he is, or does he have a strike partner and therefore he can drift? Because I guess what I'm trying to say is he constantly out of position if he's a lone striker?
No, he's kind of. What's interesting is it's quite a similar system to what Potter tends to play, in that he'll tend to have at least two players who are quite close to him. He will drop deep and he'll happily pick up the ball and look to progress play. But Saint-Étienne have been awful this season, and that's probably why you saw his numbers pick up towards the end of the season. They started the season really slowly, but he is happy to drop deep. He's happy to kind of be the focal point and link up play, and he's got a Georgian player with him, and my mind, I'm terrible with Georgian names at the moment. I can just about get Kvaratskhelia from PSG, but
I just call him Kava.
That's a good solution. He's got a Georgian player behind him whose name will probably come to me right after we finish this video. But they're the two standouts at Saint-Étienne, and they are probably the only reason that they were in with a shout of staying up. And even though they have gone down, I think it's down to the fact that he was willing to put in the shift. You mentioned that heat map. He's willing to pull out wide. He's willing to kind of drop deep, as you mentioned, but linking up the play is what he does best. And that's where the best chance that Saint-Étienne had of staying up came from, is from the goals that him and this Georgian player were involved in.
Does his name start with M by any chance? Is that?
Marmadashvili or something? It might be. But yeah, off the top of my head, I can't remember. I'd have to look it up. But I think these two are players that, to be honest, we could do with both. I genuinely believe that they're both quality players and that they would fit into a top league. But Stassin in particular, he is exactly what I think people wanted Haller to be, where he's this mobile forward who's quite big, good in the air and technically capable. But he's got that added bit of work rate that I think Haller didn't quite have at times, or maybe frustrated a lot of people where he just kind of looked like he wasn't that fussed. Stassin doesn't really do that. He puts in a shift and he's good in the air. As I mentioned, he can ride a challenge. He's not the strongest, but he can ride a challenge and position his body that he can quickly turn his man or win a foul. And I think for West Ham, maybe he would be great competition for that starter spot. I think we should still be looking for another forward because of the situation we're in. But this would be a really big step in the right direction.
I was going to ask you, is he, because when you see you linked to a 20-year-old, your initial thoughts are, well, is he ready to start now, or is this a bit of a project player? But I guess when you said we still need another striker, what happens if we retained Füllkrug? Would he and Füllkrug be considered a good pairing, even not necessarily on the pitch at the same time, but just going forward? Would you be okay with him and Füllkrug as the only strikers at West Ham next season, or do you think we'd need another one, and if so, why?
I think we'd need another one regardless. That's just my opinion, because I think if we could get someone who, say we got another versatile forward in, someone like Guessand at Nice, where they're a big physical player, but also they can play out wide and they're comfortable utilising their pace, but also playing up top. I think if we could do that, you'd be saying, right, this is a really strong attack that we've got. We could use Fulkrug off the bench, and even if he gets knocked and has to miss spells out, then you've still got two young strikers who fit the sort of physical, pacey player we need up top. And I think that's where these two players would really excel. And Stassin in particular, while I kind of said maybe he needs competition, I think that's only really down to the fact that he does tend to have these periods where he needs to adjust to a league. You saw it when he kind of came into Saint-Étienne, and I've got the numbers down here where he started the season, and what did he do? He moves there, gets an assist in one of his first games, and then he kind of goes 4 games where Saint-Étienne don't do anything. And then they win away at Strasbourg. They win 2-0, and it's one that they're not really expected to.
Yeah,
he's outstanding in all their opening games, but they lose 4-2 to Angers, and I think the wheels start to kind of fall off there. And he gets a goal against Strasbourg, but it's the fact that on paper you look at it and you go, he's gone 3 games without a goal, despite a win. For a forward, people might look at that and scoff, but he's still got an assist, and they go, oh yeah, but his job's to score goals. So he went this period, he gets a goal again in a loss against Toulouse, and again you think, well, it's good that he's scoring goals, he's getting his confidence back, but it's kind of, we need points on the board. And I'm afraid to say it, Gio, but the turning point for him, I think, was when he gets a double. He gets a brace for Belgians under 21s against Scotland. And and he looked really sharp in that game. And I think that was the turning point for him. It took them a little while to get results. But as I mentioned, that period, 16 games in 2025, when he gets 11 goals and an assist. And I think that's just when they started to click. And unfortunately, it was already a bit too late at that point. They hadn't got enough points on the board. But things like his link-up play and the runs he was making, his teammates just started to find. And I think if you got him at West Ham, players like Bowen and, maybe Somerville, if Fulkrug's there as well, Stassin could run onto his knockdowns. It's another level of player, with all due respect to Saint-Étienne. I think he could be a really, really good asset for us.
I always like to ask for a comparison to a player in the Premier League so myself and those listening can compare, not ability-wise, just purely style-wise. So if you want to pick the best striker in the league, feel free. You want to pick the worst striker in the league, feel free. But in terms of style, which player is the most similar, do you think, in the Premier League?
So I think in terms of, I'm going to name one who's not currently playing, which might be frustrating, but I mentioned how he makes things look easy. And it kind of reminds me of Berbatov in that sense, not quite in the sense of, he's just plucking it out of the air and controlling it, killing it dead, that sort of thing. But the way he moves his body, he's got that deceptive turn of pace that I mentioned. And while having good close control that links up play, I think it's that sort of Berbatov-esque style. And, it's I'm trying to think of who he compares to in the Premier League, and I don't really think there is someone that fits his mold. Maybe a Havertz style player, that sort of forward who links play well, but also has the ability to get on the end of things.
Okay, but that's interesting. I haven't watched. Go on.
Oh, I like the comparison to Berbatov just because Berbatov's one of my favourite players, to be honest.
I haven't watched any footage yet, Sloth, but looking at his statistics in terms, just for like a brief overview, he looks incredibly clinical. So I'm just looking here at shots on target. It's 51.3%, which puts him in the 93rd percentile for top 5 leagues of European football. But if you go one stage further than that, which is goals per shot, he's in the 97th percentile. You want to look at, goals minus XGs in the 90th percentile. So data-wise, it's suggesting this guy is a bit of a sniper, really, and he is just clinical. Is that the case?
Yeah, well, I mean, when I was looking at him earlier in the season, I think and it was about March time, he was averaging a goal every 1.8 shots. So he's very sort of selective of when he takes his shots. And as I mentioned, the runs that he makes, they're not just for himself. He creates room for other people. So he will see that if he's managed to drag two centre-backs slightly out of position, they're focused on him, he can see his teammate running in. And I think that when people might say, oh, he doesn't take a lot of shots, well, it's the quality of the shots that matter. And like you mentioned, it's that sort of ability to snipe in and say, well, I'm just going to hit it. And if you look at his goal catalogue, they're all kind of, there aren't any 30-yard screamers on there. There are some really tidy finishes from outside the area. But you look at it and you think, right, he's chosen to shoot there because he's confident. He's a confident finisher. And I think that when you look at how he links play, he's got this confidence in himself that he's either going to play his teammate in and they're going to do something, they're going to create something, or he'll do it himself.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Sloth. I've got one more question for you in a second. But I think this is one of the first players this summer that, to be fair, there's been a couple of Belgian midfielders that we've been linked to, and I've never heard of them, but I can look at their statistics and the data side of it, and that side of it's impressive. But I think the big difference between those and this player is that he's playing in the top 5 leagues of European football. He's just getting compared to players in those leagues, whereas back in Belgium, it's getting compared to the other 14. So that I think it's easier to look good in that data perspective. But I always think the eye test trumps data completely. So thank you very much for applying the eye test aspect of it. And my last question is, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 perfect, get him now, 0, don't bother. How much do you want to sign this guy?
Oof, I'm going to say an 8 or a 9. I think, especially for the 20 million euros that's rumoured, I think if we could get him for that, it's probably a 9. And just kind of to put it into perspective for a lot of people, I've seen Liverpool fans saying that they wanted him as a Jota replacement. So there's a lot of confidence around this player and what he can do going forward. So I think if we could get him for 20 million euros now, for me, that's a 9 out of 10. There's obviously still a long way to go. And at just 20 years old, I think the famous West Ham striker curse is one that, there's a lot of weight on anyone's shoulders coming into West Ham at the moment this summer. And I genuinely think that he looks like the kind of player, I mentioned that sort of aloof, floating style. He's the kind of player that I think could buck that trend and just make it look easy. And even if, say, he doesn't score in the first 5 or 6 games, I think you'll find that he'll get an assist in there. And that'll boost the confidence. It will get players like Bowen more hyped with him and those around him getting him involved in play and confident with him.
Love that. Well, the striker curse has to end at some point, right? It has to. A lot of averages suggest so. This would probably be like our 60th striker that we've signed under David Sullivan. At some point, one of them's got to work out. So whether this is the player or someone else, fingers crossed it happens sooner rather than later. And it feels like this summer is the one we need it to, because we've got 2 goal scorers at the minute in Bowen and Souček. If we can add a 3rd goal scorer to the team, that'd be hugely beneficial. Well, Sloth, thank you very much. You guys at home, if you would like to hear and hear and see more from this lovely person, do subscribe to the Babbling Irons YouTube channel. I'll put a link in the description below, and their latest video will be on your screen in about 5 seconds time. So all you have to do is click it and you can go watch it. But Sloth, thank you very much.
More than welcome. Thank you for having me on, Gio.
Anytime. And you guys at home, if you've enjoyed the video, please do drop a like on it by clicking thumbs up, subscribing to Damage Chat, myself and Sloth. Catch you in a bit.